Wow, I'm just finding out some stuff about my guest. This is incredible. Welcome back to Jeff Koinange Live here at Citizen Television. 36-year-old senator from Homa Baker. He just turned 42, sorry. You turned 42
yesterday.
Yesterday?
Yeah.
Happy belated.
Thanok you.
And 36-year-old Kericho, you're 36?
No, 34. He's a baby.
Okay.
No.
He's a baby.
How can you
He's
call
a
me
baby.
I would have called him a rebel if we went to the same school.
And you're his chairman.
And I'm his chairman in the devolution committee.
This guy is my chairman, devolution committee.
Have you ever fought?
In the committee, yeah. Not physically.
Okay, good.
We fight.
All right, thank
we
you.
do our
No,
battles, yeah.
Jeff, we have very interesting reverse roles.
Go on.
He's one of the best footballers in Bunge. I am one of the fastest runners in Bunge.
Come on.
He does
What
400.
distance?
400 meters.
Yeah.
What's your time?
1 minute and about 5 seconds.
That's not bad.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Did you run in school or did you run in high school? Or...
No, I used to run away from trouble in school.
So we have the 400-meter champion and the soccer star.
So
the striker.
it's
I thought-
this is the Kenya we want, where Luos are running and Kalenjins are playing football. The new Kenya. Yeah.
This is a great start. It can get better than this because, and you mentioned this, Senator, there's no way that, you see people fighting on TV and the next minute they're on a show making fun of, the disappointment and the embarrassment that they cause. It's not right.
No, let me tell you, the folly of our politics, there are a lot of people in our parliament who are elected on the basis of their criminal and violent activities. I know some members of parliament, I'm not going to mention names, they went to the electorate and told them, I am the one who's going to fix Murkomen when I meet him on the corridors of parliament. Yeah. Or I'm the one who's going to fix Dwale. Yeah. Or I'm the one who's going to punch Orengo because he's giving us a hard time. So, and you find the electorate voting somebody like that they are supposed to go and punch someone along the corridors of parliament. Parliament is not a wrestling ring. Parliament is a place for representation, for legislation. It comes from the word pala. We are able to talk, debate, agree, and disagree in words, but not physically.
So when you saw those guys the other day, what did you think, Senator?
That's the tragedy of our politics. Right or wrong is determined on who do you support. And it's most of the time has to do with the big guys, the Railas and the Rutos and the Uhurus of this world, such that every decision, every action is viewed as being right or wrong, depending on, we don't have a set standard where we say, okay, I support this particular camp, but that was outrightly wrong, and that happens to be a challenge which, if we are able to surmount as a country, we'll be able to bring the hygiene that is so badly needed in our politics. That was unfortunate. Those are young people like ourselves here. We didn't set a very good example. No wonder kids are burning schools and beating up their teachers, things that we could never have imagined during our school days. But if adults are setting that kind of an example, is unfortunate. I've spoken to both of them actually are my good friends because they are people that we meet and interact with Parliament. I haven't been able to get through to any of them, but when we meet in Parliament, I'll tell them that that is not conduct expected of somebody who carries the title honorable.
Absolutely.
It was completely irresponsible of them, and I hope it doesn't carry on.
Yeah. Senator, when you see the temperatures rising 18 months before the general election, is this a troubling signs?
It is. We've said our elections are mini civil wars. And when you have a referendum, a plebiscite like the BBI, it becomes another civil war. And we've said, if you're going to have like 2 civil wars in a span of 5 years, then you're killing the economy. So we had the last election, we have the anticipated 2022 election, which is always very competitive, especially when a president is retiring. We have a situation where Uhuru is not going to defend. So there's a vacancy, and everyone is fighting for that position. Now we have a plebiscite, which has been long drawn. I think one of the mistakes we made as a nation is to have this conversation for too long. When you have such a conversation for too long, it becomes poisonous. And there have been examples. You even saw the Obamacare debate. When it became too long, it became poisonous. Then the economy started going down, and people started fearing the conversation around reforms to healthcare, and everyone started retreating to their bases. Let's get this BBI debate over and done with. And I'm glad that county assemblies have started approving it, and I'm sure that we're going to get the number of 24. Let it come to Parliament. Let us take it to the people. If the people say yes, let's move on. If they say no, that is the will of the people that we must be able to live with, so that we diffuse the tension. The longer it takes, there'll be more rallies, there'll be more Bamas, there'll be more Githurais. I was hammered in Githurai. And it's unfortunate that one of our colleagues was in Githurai the previous day, inciting people not to welcome us in Githurai. Why would you look at Kajwang as a Luo when, yes, I was born in Homa Bay, but I went to school here in Nairobi? At what point then do I stop being a Kenyan and I become a Luo? At what point do I become unwelcome in Githurai? At what point do I become unwelcome in Kericho or any other parts of the country? There's a lot of madness and I would say foolishness that is going on in our politics. We need to get the BBI over and done with, move to the next stage where we are thinking about the COVID pandemic. Jeff, our economy has contracted because of COVID. In fact, and I've been saying this, we are probably no longer a lower middle income economy. We are probably gone back to developing
low income economy.
Yes, a low income economy. No one knows because every other day we are told about debt. Every other day we are told about companies collapsing, the economy going down. Let's fix the BBI, the rules of the game, the politics, the nation building, then go back and have a conversation around the economy and prepare for the next election.
Senator, you must have a different view then.
Partly, not fully, completely different, but partly on some of the things that he says to do with the economy, I agree. I still hold the view that BBI isn't a priority at this particular time because of the kind of challenges that we are facing as a nation. Health workers, most of our counties, I don't know if it's different in Homa Bay, but in the county that I represent, Kericho, most of nurses and doctors are on strike. This is something that even, unfortunately, mainstream media hasn't given the kind of airtime that is deserved. Many of our people cannot afford to get treated in private hospitals, and this is a challenge that we continue to face. Secondly, is economic situation in the country where if we continue with the kind of politics that you're seeing, of course it's unnecessary distraction for people, time that would have been otherwise used in engaging in productive activities is wasted discussing a lot of politics and people following. And you know how Kenyans love politics. By the way, you know, with the onset of all this, people even don't have to wait on TV. If you follow and scan through our social media channels, the bloggers that sometimes share some of these highly charged political functions, you'll realize that for any particular blogger, they have almost 10,000 people following. That tells you that for a rally that will be on for about 3 or 4 hours, that is time wasted that people could have been engaged in productive activities that people are following. Therefore, I share in his concerns that as a country, there are things we've got to discuss and we've got to say, what do we do? How do we avoid the trap of 2007? Because you can see it coming. The people who are adults in this country, I don't know if you're in Kenya then or still out, this is almost around the time that we began hearing the kind of language that you're saying that, oh, this is my region, nobody should come about. When you see that kind of language being repeated so boldly, it sends the alarm bells for anybody that is that should be concerned, especially now that you have two of the front runners. When you think about the front runners in this presidential contest, these are your most, the very best of political mobilizers. These are guys who know how to draw out the passions in their support base. They've got a huge following that is nearly fanatical. So if you don't put the checks early in advance and agree on the rules of the game, then you are headed to a disaster. Remember, and I look forward to Parliament opening next week so that we can place some of these questions. Number one question that I want to place on, because sometimes we take a lot of flack as leaders and say, oh, you guys are coming on TV to complain, but sometimes we've settled our work. For example, last session, before we took a break in December, we gave the country the rule, the law that is required to set up the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. That hasn't been done. Yet we know, as per our reading of the Kriegler report, he warned us and he was quite clear about it, that if, gentlemen, if you want to have a credible and fair election, ensure that at least, at the very bare minimum, have the IEBC constituted 2 years before the general election. We're talking about 18 months. Yet we have got a crippled IEBC with only 3 commissioners, battered in terms of image and all these other things. So Parliament passed the law that allows the president to declare the vacancy, then we can fill up the extra positions. But that isn't happening. I don't know at what point we are going to have that discussion. Yet we know for each of the last 3 or 4 elections, IEBC has been such a contentious issue. This would have been a perfect opportunity for us to say, okay, since we are in this era where we are disagreeing in most of the things, but at least there are a few things that we read from the same script. What is the best way to organize the IEBC and those kind of things?
Sure. Senator, are we walking right into this eyes wide open? Because let's not forget, 2007, 2008 began like this. It began like, it was like a joke, or everyone dismissed it. But you know what happened after that. This is 12, 13 years later. Are we that myopic? Are we that forgetful?
We must learn from history, not just our own history. We must learn from global history. There's been the story told of Rwanda. Rwanda unraveled because of class differences. The Hutu-Tutsi divide has never been a cultural divide. It has never been a racial divide. It has been an economic divide. When the colonialists came to Africa, they decided that the cattle keepers were going to be the Tutsis, the dynasties. And they decided that the cultivators were going to be the Hutus, the hustlers. They repeated this narrative, the English, the Belgians, until we ended up with 2 tribes, in quotes, called Tutsi and Hutu, which was founded on class differences. It took a number of years before Rwanda imploded. And it took hundreds of thousands of lives for sense to reign and for Rwanda to turn the corner. If we can't learn from the lessons in countries like Rwanda, and some of the utterances we are making in this country is clearly driving us into that direction. We are starting a class war. We are starting to classify people. We are saying that Aaron and I, because we're young people, and we just got into politics the other day, so we now be becoming hustlers. And other people, because they are landed and they are loaded and they have got some wealth and they've been around, so now they are dynasties. This is a very dangerous conversation. You talked about learning lessons, and that lesson, we have seen it. Another lesson that we must learn from is this rising populism, Trumpism, Brexit in the UK, Sonkoism in Kenya. I mean, this guy should be very remorseful, because Sonko said they used to smoke some things while they were together in the Senate. He should be very afraid of Sonko files. He might find himself in the same situation. But Sonkoism, I'm glad that it's not about Sonko as a person, but the approach he took to leadership. It was an approach where, if you were to demonstrate to young people the secret to success, you would not have a script to give the young people. You will just have landed, I'm successful, but you can't explain how you got into that particular position. We must show our people that it takes time and effort to rise to the pinnacle of leadership, like that position that Sonko was holding. And once you are there, you don't start calling people all sorts of names and insults. You're supposed to work for the benefit of the people who elected you. Trumpism, we saw the violence in Congress, extremely embarrassing. Of course, many of us coming from third world economies or low middle income economies were happy that, okay, after all, even the Americans are just as badly behaved or worse behaved than we are. But that should not be the comfort. We should not allow our politics to take that direction of Trumpism, Sonkoism, Brexitism. All these countries are now regretting some of the choices that they made, and the damage that Trump has done to the prestige of the United States of America, leave alone the domestic economic issues, because the US is quite resilient, more resilient than Kenya is. I think the US is defaced, and Joe Biden is going to have a hard time to reverse that. And in Kenyan politics, we are clearly seeing who the Donald Trumps are and who the Joe Bidens are. The Joe Bidens are the ones talking about Building Bridges initiative. They have identified the problems that affect us as a country. All these things you're talking about, the violence, people, Soro jumping onto the stage and punching my churchmate, Simba Arati. By the way, we go to church with Simba Arati. We're always sitting next to each other.
Do you really?
Oh, yes, we do.
You need to change
no, Simba was attacked. Even if I was the pastor of Nairobi Central SDA Church and someone came to grab the microphone, self-defense is legitimate. So that does not stop Simba from being a good practicing Christian.
Right.
So, divisive elections, violence, ethnic antagonism, all those are issues that we are dealing with in BBI. Now, our friends say that the prescription we have is wrong, but they agree that the diagnosis is right. Now, if the prescription could be wrong, it could be a matter of prescribing 10 mg versus 5 mg. So they think we are probably prescribing 5 mg rather than 10 mg of whatever drug it is.
Yeah.
But
Vaccine.
5 mg is better than nothing. If we agree on the diagnosis, there has to be a solution. They're not giving us solutions. They're telling the youth that instead of accepting 35% to go to counties, so that the welfare of health workers can be taken care of, reject and take wheelbarrows. They're saying instead of applying the principle of subsidiarity and establishing ward development funds where a certain percentage of county resources will go into, they're telling the youth, reject, take mkokoteni. When we are talking about sanitizing our politics, doing away with the winner-takes-all approach to our politics, they're saying, forget about it. As we are hustlers, we don't care about that. These are the Donald Trumps. And the BBI proponents, I would liken them to the Joe Bidens. If we cannot learn from history, because that's where you started from, 2007, if you cannot learn from Rwanda, if you cannot learn from the US with Donald Trump, if you cannot learn from Nairobi with my good friend Sonko and his unfortunate turn of events, we'll be fools.
What do you say, Senator Trump? I mean, Cheruiyot?
Senator Trump, I like that.
Was there a deal earlier before I came here that
I just said
Moses
Trump.
is going to give me a bad name, then you're going to hang me? Anyway, I completely disagree with everything that Moses is saying, because if you listen to him keenly, he says all the good things, but forgets which side of the divide is actually pushing for the kind of things that he's advocating for. Number one, let me begin with this so-called class war that we are being accused of setting up the country on, and be very clear from the very onset that I have taken time to listen to the hustler conversation. And I struggle every time I hear these guys accuse us of setting up a class war. Because in the first instance, our conversation is all-inclusive. It is just a simple request that as we make our decisions as a country, let us be mindful of everyone, including those that we consider not to be as useful to the economy. Who are the downtrodden? The people that these guys generally refer to as takataka. I do not know how a request to include everyone in the decision-making table can somehow be reduced to a class war of certain sorts. Let me give you a simple example, Jeff, about what we are talking about. That's why these guys don't get it. There is absolutely no discussion about hustlers versus dynasties. It is you guys that are pushing it to make it versus anyone. For us, is about a country that all of us feel a sense of nationhood. An example that I can give you, Jeff, is that I told you a few minutes ago that earlier on about 2018, you'd remember there was a big demonstration down in Nyamakima that the government had made a policy decision and said, for many of the people that do the Mali business, and I'm sure you know about it, what those guys do is that they import their goods and wares from China and Turkey. And because they do not have the capacity to ship in an entire freight of container, so you sell shoes, I sell watches, he sells vuvuzelas, we pull together and we fit together into one container. But because of this kind of attitude, the kind of attitude that is being displayed by the proponents of BBI, where they imagine if you speak about the challenges of ordinary Kenyans, you're disturbing the social strata and therefore setting up a class war. Somebody sat in a well-air-conditioned office and made a decision and says, oh, you guys are tax frauds. From today, everybody must fill their container. If you can't fill your container, go to hell. The same mistake, somebody goes to a place like Njoro and Londiani, the county that I represent. Many of the small business people there that are in the timber business because of the region and the place that they come in from, are not able to set up a proper timber manufacturing plant. So what they do is that they pull together resources and set up light industries. People believe, and somebody sits in a well-lit office in Nairobi and makes a decision and say, if you do not have capacity to buy an entire forest block, and this costs millions of shillings, ordinary people are not able to purchase, they close that entire line of business. That is why we have said that a time has reached where we must be mindful of the decisions that we make. Let us make decisions that we know are good for us the well-to-do people, but also make sense to the mama mboga and the guys that push mkokoteni, the people that rely on those wheelbarrows and spade that these guys despise. How that is reduced and degenerates into a class war, as Moses is claiming, I do not know. By the way, Moses, you guys, the thing that you need to be afraid of most is if we keep up with the kind of this broken down economy where we are only bothered about releasing press conferences at Serena and saying, oh, the economy grew by 5.6%, we had this number of employment, yet it doesn't make sense to the ordinary person. Here we continue to become a highly unequal society, then you need to be afraid that in another 5 to 10 years, people will be showing up at your very beautiful house in Lavington or the leafy suburb of this county and saying, by the way, I've got to feed, I've got to eat. That is the thing you need to fear more than the conversation.
By the way, hasn't that already started? I'll get to you in a moment. Senator. Hasn't that already started?
Actually,
with border riders.
Yes.
When you hit them or something
happens,
they start torching your car.
Because these guys call them takataka. They do not want them to be included in a conversation. By the way, just to wrap up, because I hear what Moses is trying to create. If you follow the prescription that they are giving us, what is the alternative to the gospel that you're pushing? The alternative is an entrenchment of tribal politics that the BBI brigade is pushing. How are they doing it? They are doing it because if you listen to the pitch, the tone and the tenor of the people who have spoken in many of their BBI rallies, they are telling us, number one, we know Kenya has got predominantly, largely 5 main communities or the big tribes. Let us create at the top at least a representation so that people can feel as if they are part and parcel of government. But many of us feel that that is a lost and a vexatious argument that any person who's properly schooled can never have, because tribes don't rule. It is individuals. I have been around this country. Part of the most difficult and the most raw object poverty that I've been able to see comes from the regions that have produced the presidents. My own home county, or the region that I come from, here central Kenya where you come from, you will still find poor people. Therefore, the argument that these guys hold that there are tribes that have occupied is a misleading conversation.
Right.
It's about a particular individual. What is the ability that you have? Therefore, if I was to choose between having a conversation of including everyone at the decision-making table and including tribes, which is what BBI appears to be prescribing as an antidote to our very difficult political contest, I'd rather have this conversation about ensuring that you have everyone included in this conversation.
Senator, your thoughts?
Explaining this hustler dynasty narrative in the manner he's trying to explain it, it's like trying to convince Kenyans that a giraffe is a goat. Every time they try to explain it, they just get entangled, and it is nothing beside class war. It is nothing beside incitement and radicalization of the population. In fact, even Osoro used to be a member of ODM. This guy was misbehaving the other day. When he left ODM and went to the UDA and Tanga, the guy just became something else. We taught him good manners, they radicalized him, now he's beating people all over the place. You see, Aaron must tell me that out of the proposals that we have put out in the BBI, what is a counter? What is a counter narrative? You just can't tell me that we need to have everyone on the table. I mean, that's political hogwash, unless we are doing Ujamaa, unless we're going back to Ujamaa. That was a system that Nyerere instituted, where in every village people would sit under a tree and make decisions. It collapsed. Unless you're going back to communism, it collapsed. In a proper liberal democracy that we have systems of representation. And you cannot, even though we are young people, Aaron and I are young people, we cannot pretend that we do not understand the history of this country. We cannot pretend that we do not understand the obsession of Kenyans with ethnic identity. And we cannot pretend that we are going to ignore the ethnicization of politics in this country. It's something that's going to take probably a generation or two for us to cure. But BBI is not just about ethnic arithmetics and ethnic balancing. I am seeing proposals like establishment of a youth commission, so that as a constitutional commission, issues to do with the youth and mainstreaming them into the economy can take center stage. What do the young people want from Kericho to Homa Bay to Githurai to Mombasa? All they want are opportunities for them to thrive. All they want is a secure economy and a secure country where they can have their fun without being bombed by Al-Shabaab or other people. They want an environment where they can raise their families, and they want their children to do better than they are doing. If my grandfather, and this is a true story, he used to sell flour using a donkey back in the 1910s. Now, I don't know whether he's going to call him a dynasty because he had a donkey in 1910. But I would not expect that they would give my father another donkey so that he continues with the family business of selling flour on the back of donkeys. And I don't expect that I, as a grandchild, will be given a donkey to continue the family business. I would expect some progression. I would expect that from my grandfather's donkey, my father could have a pickup, I could have a truck, and my child could have, something much more advanced. Leadership is about offering solutions. We are not getting solutions from the other side of the divide. But it does not worry me, because I believe that there's a solution on the table. The only thing is that we live in the age of alternative facts. We live in the age of Donald Trump. We live in the age where in the morning you will wake up, Jeff, you'll find yourself photoshopped in a situation that you are not in. And you'll have to spend the next 1 month trying to convince people that you're not in there. We're finding people who are very proficient in using propaganda and political conmanship to ensure that they muddy the water. Aaron, remember, we are young people, and we're just having a conversation about how the future would look like in this country. Yeah. We must define what our aspiration is. Singapore started off around the same level. South Korea, they even broke up north and south. They even had a war. Look at even countries like Botswana that were fairly small. How can we define our aspiration? In my view, Jeff, I want to define it, first of all, from economic terms on wealth per capita income. Right now, we are at about 2,000, while Singapore is about 60,000 US dollars per capita. What can we do to bake a bigger cake? What can we do to involve our young people in baking that cake? And those are some of the concerns that the BBI is addressing. But it's not just about wealth. Some of the unhappiest people in this world live in places like Singapore and South Korea because life is too sterile. Even in the US, I don't think they're as happy as we are. So create wealth, but also create an environment where people can be proud to come from Rusinga, people can be proud to come from Nandi, people can be proud of their culture, but without using that culture as a competitive advantage over the other. So create a cohesive society. Yeah. And that's part of what BBI is doing. Then create a free and secure market and economy where property rights are respected, where nobody is going to come and burn your property simply because you have a little bit more than they do. They are taking us to a direction where even property rights, which has been established as one of the foundations for prosperity in modern economics. They want us to trash property rights. They want us to say that, okay, now those who don't have are the ones we should listen to, yet they do not want to invest in making those who do not have to have more. We have enough in this country to ensure that the guy pushing a mkokoteni today, his child should not push a mkokoteni, his child should have a pickup. The guy pushing a pickup today, he's pushing a wheelbarrow today, his child should not aspire to push a wheelbarrow. And all those things, from SME funding, from the Youth Commission, to the funds, and from the constitutional principle that we have put in. I think it is Article 11A. We are saying that it is going to be a constitutional obligation for any government to undertake sustainable development, which includes sustainable agriculture. At some point, they were saying there was no agriculture in the BBI. Includes establishing a digital infrastructure for our young people, and looking into things like the blue economy, pastoralism. All those are solutions we have put on the table, and I hope Kenyans will listen, because there is no counter proposal. The counter proposals are wheelbarrows and class wars and kokotenis and punching matches like what we saw in Kisii.
By the way, what you just mentioned a few moments ago, is probably Kenyans are hearing it for the first time. Believe it or not, probably they're hearing for the first time. People haven't read this.
About what?
About this. BBI,
the kind of things that he's saying.
Yeah.
No, they're not hearing it for the first time because, number one...
I'm glad you know they're there. I'm happy.
Yes, but not in the BBI document.
They're there.
There is absolutely nothing that stops the implementation of 100% of the things that Senator Kajwang has talked about are such that it will only necessitate a referendum for us to be able to guarantee any of those things. As he speaks today, he knows very well, and he's a member of parliament like me, that we have created the youth fund, we've got Uwezo fund. What would be so difficult in us having a broader conversation and saying, away with the hypocrisy, let's cut these long stories about, oh, it's about empowerment, it's about broadening, ensuring that everybody has a bite at the cherry, and just choose to be leaders and be adults in the room and tell each other the truth that, guys, there is absolutely nothing that this present document speaks about that cannot be achieved. Even the 35% that he's speaking about, the language as per our constitution is at least 15%. Senator Kajwang speaks good English. He knows that 35% is over and above 15% that is constitutionally mandated. We do not need to pass a referendum for us to achieve that. You know very well that if we wanted to empower our young people, we do not need to spend the billions of shillings that will be spent, the kind of mobilization that we saw over the weekend and the ones that you're going to have this weekend, bringing in MCAs, throwing money and bribing our members of county assembly for us to be able to secure this. Let us put, as they say in the English language, let us put our money where our mouths are and ensure that action begins to trickle down. Therefore, Senator Kajwang, you can go on and ramble about all these beautiful things, but so long as there is absolutely no shortage of good laws to ensure this country prospers, Jeff. What we lack is a good sense and people to take responsibility in ensuring that once we've had a conversation and we've agreed, because all these social rights that you're speaking about are actually in our Bill of Rights, the right to live in a clean environment, to own property, wherever one needs to. We do not need to pass any constitutional amendment for people to be able to enjoy these rights. But because of the convenience of a political narrative, these guys think Kenyans are fools. Let me tell you, Moses, I hope you saw the survey that was released today, that 70% of Kenyan youths, young people like me and you, will never support this particular document because they're not foolish. There's a shortage of foolish people in this country. They know that if you want to give them a chance to have a fair shot of life the way you're talking about, then match it with resources. Let us do our work as parliament. Let us rearrange our priorities and say, in the budget of the financial year that is coming next week, we resume parliament. This is a month that we do our budget policy statement. Let us see that in the BPS, it matches with the kind of flowery language that we are hearing here, where we see continuous investment in light industries so that we ensure that we are creating jobs for young people. But to expect that you can go to a rally, you can come to national TV and tell our young people that you cannot enjoy empowerment until you pass BBI and you think people will foolishly follow you, I've got news for you. There are no more fools in this country. That's why people have problems with the kind of language that you guys are speaking, and they are not having a buy-in. If, by the way, Moses, let me tell you, if this document was as good as you want to talk about, then why all the bribery? Why all the meetings that you're having? We wouldn't need to force good people. If it was a good thing, then it would have had the buy-in. The reason why you're lamenting at the beginning of this show that this process is taking too long is because, one, it is shrouded in mystery, it is founded on deceit, and it has nothing to do with the people. It's a rich man's sport. It's about political mobilization. Who in this country doesn't know that BBI only means something useful to Prime Minister Raila Odinga? For him, it's a platform for him to launch his presidential campaign and get a chance to use public resources, because it's a government project for him to go around the country and say, oh, I'm bringing and creating solutions for you. The kind of things that he's saying are things that can be achieved as things stand. For the president, I strongly feel, and I am vindicated, I said it here many times, I don't know if it was on JKL or on another particular show, but I remember being in this studio and said, for him, it's just about winning back political support back in his backyard. He confirmed the same for the country. You listen to the kind of language that he was speaking in Sagana, and you realize to him, it has nothing to do with the country Kenya, but everything to do with how he gains favor with his own people. And that is the unfortunate thing that we are saying. Please, good people, can we be serious? Can we have a honest conversation about what is it that we can do so that Kenya achieves all its aspirations that we've always had since 1963, that we want a country that everybody feels that they are part and parcel, that they've got a decent share of shot in life. This argument that we hear ad nauseum about, oh, if your grandfather rode a wheelbarrow, you shouldn't be given a wheelbarrow. The question that these guys should ask themselves is, why is it that a wheelbarrow that made sense to their grandfather in the 1910 still makes sense in 2020? That's a question that we should be asking and answer and find a solution and say, what is it that these countries that you're quoting, Moses, the Singapores and the South Koreas, what is it that they were able to do and move entire masses of population from being, moving them out of poverty into the kind of status that we are aspiring? The only thing that they were able to do, by the way, is this conversation that you're talking about, ensuring that the national cake, one, is increased, and secondly, is shared equitably, something that we can do without this nonsense.
By the way, I'll tell him what they did.
It was a donkey in 1910 and not a wheelbarrow.
Yeah, exactly. So even that donkey, it still makes sense to some people.
Ride a donkey today, or maybe I should ride a horse. So
Go
that
to
it looks
Lamu.
like
People still ride donkey.
like it's an upgrade.
Go to Lamu. I
Let me tell you
what you guys ride in Homa Bay, but if you go to Lamu,
there's some guys who ride hippos for night sports. But that's our tourism attraction.
By the way, is that in BBI as well?
No, that can be done within statutory regulation.
I thought you were going to tell us that.
Let me tell you what they did, because you're asking, you're assuming.
No, I've told you exactly what they did. What they did is that they ensured that there was equitable distribution of resources.
We'll talk about the Singapores
there
and
are two
Malaysias.
things they did that we are running away from, and that is what the BBI is proposing. One, they built a nation. They built a national identity. Two, they fixed corruption. Those are the two biggest problems
But the
we are having
2010
in this
constitution
country.
suffices.
No, leave alone. It was not just about constitution. It was not just about pen on paper. It was not just about a scroll hanging somewhere in a museum or in government printers. They lived it. So if you, even if you're going to take Singapore, let's take Singapore for an example. When they broke away from the Malayan Federation, because Singapore is a tiny nation, and they figured out they couldn't survive without confederating with Indonesia and Malaysia, but they were kicked out of that confederation. They came back and said, our lives is at risk. We must move forward as a nation. We must fix corruption. We must be meritocratic. And it is upon that platform that Lee Kuan Yew started implementing his industrial policy and economic policies. If you start by implementing industrial policies and economic policies in a rotten political system, you are not going to go anywhere.
He never called a conference to say, let us amend our constitution.
No, Aaron, it is not
That's
about...
the difference between us and you.
The constitution is not just a scroll. The constitution is the values that you abide and live, follow as a nation. You see, and Jeff, and I want to shock you, that all these proposals that we have on the table, not all of them will go to a referendum. Go back and read the Constitution. It says, once the National Assembly and Senate passes the bill, the President shall decide which of the amendments require a referendum in line with the Constitution. We probably, going into a referendum, we are probably not going to end up with the entire document. I don't know what the strategy would be, but it is possible that we can only take to the referendum the issues that have to deal with fundamental rights, the issues that have to deal with the structure of the executive, the powers and functions of parliament. So it is not true for Aaron to tell us that we will need, it is mandatory that there has to be a referendum to set up some of these things. But what is running away from?
The cost,
before we get to the cost, what you're running away from is that all these lamentation, and there's a book in the Bible called Lamentation. The Luo translation is very interesting. It says kulialia. All this kulialia. I mean, this guy has been in power for the last 8 years as a principal assistant to the president. What the president told us, and after the handshake, we had a meeting of those who were supporting NASA and the president, just to share what our thoughts and aspirations were. The president told us he had two serious problems, and he has not hesitated to cite those problems every other time. One is corruption, endemic corruption in government. Himself, he said just the other week how much money is lost per day. He came to parliament and gave us a list of shame of people, including his own cabinet, who were engaged in corruption. We have the CS Treasury facing charges over corruption. We have Aurora and Kimoret Dam, which on paper is complete, The same paper is saying that the constitution is just a piece of paper. On paper, Aurora and Kimorera has been constructed. On the ground,
there's no paper
on the
like
ground,
that, please,
on the
Moses.
ground, there is nothing. The president is frustrated about corruption. The second thing the president is frustrated about is there's lack of unity of purpose in government. He is going left, his deputy is going right. How do you even pull, even if it was a donkey pulling a cart, a mkokoteni, the mkokoteni is going right and the donkey is going left. You can never move. These guys have paralyzed government. After paralyzing government, they turn around and criticize the same government. They start speaking the same language we were speaking back then. I do not agree with everything the government is doing. I do not believe that Kenya should be where it is. I do not believe that the levels of poverty we are seeing is acceptable. I do not believe that we are faithful to Vision 2030. I do not believe that we are faithful to the Big Four agenda. Now, instead of us hearing a continuation that I am the deputy president, we are responsible for the Big Four agenda, and this is how I want to continue it and make it alive and ensure that we achieve these aspirations, we are hearing none of that. We are just getting fists, we are getting insults, we are being called witch doctors, we are being called drunkards and all that. Let's go back to fundamentals. What these countries did differently is that they moved away from ad hominem arguments that we see flying around in Burma and in our rallies. They went back and it was competition on who had the better economic plan. And to fix Kenya, Jeff, the Vision 2030, all political parties agree with it. Look at all our manifestos. Everyone is committed to implementing Vision 2030. It's just that the government, where Aaron is part of, okay,
Why do you want to run away yet a few minutes ago?
No,
you told us you normally sit with the president.
I mean, he's the president of the Republic of Kenya.
Yeah, so don't run away from
and
him.
we've accepted. But the government, the party that runs government, to which Aaron belongs, and back then when he was still in power, he used to be, even his swag along the corridors of parliament was different. Nowadays, he walks around frustrated like kuku ambayo imenyeshewa. So you can't frustrate that government, then come on national TV, start asking why government has not done A, B, C, D. You are the one who's supposed to be giving Kenyans the answer, and then you want us to give you a 5-year term to continue doing the nothing that you've done in the last 8 years.
By the way, you know, it all boils down, and you mentioned it, Singapore has had literally no resources, no natural resources.
Nothing.
It just had the port, and that's
Like
what they
we have
utilized.
in Mombasa.
And what does it boil down to? It was leadership.
Correct.
Let's face it, Lee Kuan Yew, in his book, you know, From Third World to First, he was a benevolent dictator. Let's face it. He was a benevolent dictator. And it took that kind of leadership in a way to steer that country to where it is today. Are we in agreement there? So what is wrong with our leadership? So that's my question. What's wrong with our leadership?
The thing is, a focus on the wrong priorities, such as the BBI. If you ask me, if I was president of the Republic of
BBI
Kenya,
aside,
no,
what is wrong with our
honestly,
BBI came 2 years ago.
Listen, Moses.
So in the last 50-something years,
Moses,
I think that's a conversation we should be having.
you know, even when I give you my space in government, you always want to rush back to opposition. You know, I made space for him so that he stops whistling in parliament and does some work. But now he's...
And I feel sorry for. I mean, it cuts a very fallen figure along the corridors of parliament. I think power
No
was
swag anymore.
the oxygen that
these
was
are the
sustaining
swag
it.
guys now, but only when it matters. When they are put to question about the challenges that the country is facing, they quickly run away. Who forgets that as early as 2019, Raila Odinga was having meetings with members of the cabinet every week, and it was being posted. Moses Kajwang used to flood our Senate social WhatsApp page. He says, oh, Baba is meeting Minister for Agriculture, so and so. But when things get bad as they are right now, they are quick to run away and say, hey, we are not part of these guys. I mean, what kind of friends are you? Be good friends with the
You
president.
still didn't answer my question.
No, I'll come to your question.
No, he has no answer. That's
No.
why
That's
why he's
not
on
the
my
reason.
case.
That's not the reason. I was just being reminding Moses that you stick with your friends in good and in bad times. Stick with Uhuru Kenyatta in his bad times, like you did during the good times. When it came to the time of sharing positions in parliament, like you did, this guy, between him and I, he's more properly in government than myself. He's a chair of devolution committee. We need to be asking him why counties are not receiving their shareable revenue. In fact, this gentleman knows very well that if we are struggling to fund 15%, how can we comfortably go before Kenyans without a plausible plan how we are going to raise additional revenue and tell them that out of the blues we are going to fund 35%? Such are the conversations. Those people that you refer to, they didn't just put numbers and figures on pieces of paper. They had broad strategic plans and said, good people, these are the resources that we had. What is the plan? And that's the kind of discipline that is missing. You asked me a very important question. What is it that you think we need to do differently? As leaders, we need to be honorable people and say, what is it that is possible to be done? We accept and say, okay, this is doable. What is not doable, like the proposals they are making? Because it is one thing to put it on paper, and he knows for a fact, for example, let me just give as an example. I'm a member of Finance and Budget Committee. I know for a fact that there is no financial year that we have been able to devolve more than 300 billion. Forget about the bills that we passed to do with the county allocation of revenue, the 316s that you read about. That is simply on paper. Every beginning of financial year, government comes back to us and says, we had a revenue shortfall. What do you want us to do? So what will make sense if we pass the report as is being proposed by them and say, let's put it at 35%, yet at the end of the financial year, memos will come from Treasury and say, okay, yeah, we know that you guys want 35%, but what is available is 10 or 5%. That is a kind of conversation, a honest and a decent one that says, we thought way back in 2010 that having this number of devolved units will take services closer to the people. But there are lessons that we've learned. People sit and say in our intergovernmental relations framework that is supposed to be envisioned, what is it that will be cheaper for national government to do other than replicating the same in our 47 units, 47 county governments? Because if you study the structure and the model that we took to county governments, and this guy being chair of devolution should be the first to propose this, is that in each of our county governments, of the billions that we talk about, only 30% of it goes directly to development. The rest of the 70 is recurrent expenditure, meaning we just changed the paymaster general from being paid, or guys that were being paid from Treasury, and began paying them at the county level. The discussion then that we need to be having is that, what is it that we are going to do to set limits on our counties and say for the first 10 years of devolution, it was okay to have 30%, of which, by the way, less than 20 counties convert or meet that target of 30% of shareable revenue going to devolution. Many are still using even up to 80% on recurrent, and say this should have been an aspirational figure. Let us ensure that in the next cycle, maybe another 2 or 3 years, each county has been set a target that figure should move down. Reduce unemployment, ensure that we tap on and take on more resources directly to the people. Let us set up light industries, as happens in countries such as the ones that we are referring to, because many of the countries that we mentioned here today, let's forget even about Singapore that has continued to be mentioned about. Think about Brazil in the years under Lula. What is it that they were able to do? Simple, light cottage industries, the same model that has worked in India, which I feel if our counties will be sufficiently kitted and ensure that the counties that he comes from, him and I share sugar as an agricultural income cash crop to many of the people that we represent. Homa Bay is a large sugar growing county, the same. There are lower parts, though we are mainly on tea, but there are parts of my county that does so well with sugar. How is it that we are able to revive these dead industries? And if it is difficult for us to revive the major ones, then let us break them down into small, leaner units that we are able to manage even to the very local level. Because it appears as Africans we struggle to manage the Mumias and the Miwanis of this world, because when you have more resources, then you have more people still.
That's not true. That's not true.
No.
When you import sugar from cheap countries and then you sell it here. Come on.
That's part of the corruption that you're talking about. That's why I have said.
Culture.
That's why I have said we struggle to run the big corporations. Break it down to cottage industries so that we know in our county, for example. Let us zone it and know that the sugar that we shall consume it from here is from company X, Y, and Z. It's not something so difficult to achieve. But if we keep on having a conversation, Moses, we had a constitutional debate in 2005. It never changed our fortune. We had it in 2010. It hadn't changed our fortune. You guys came with Okoa Kenya in 2015. For heaven's sake, what is this that is lying to you that if we're able to pass the BBI, it will still change our country?
You still didn't answer my question.
No, Jeff.
You still didn't answer my question. Hold on, gentlemen. Let me take a break. You hold that thought. I'm going to take a break, come back. You still didn't answer my question.
He's a smart guy, but keeping the wrong company.
Who? Then you need to hang out. You need to hang out more with me.
Yeah, I mean, you're smart, but your company is
When we come
not
back,
helping.
you get the first shot. And I'm glad there's no fisticuffs happening here.
Not
You
yet.
guys are gentlemen.
You know, he has a tie, so if he needs to behave, I'll pull an Osoro on him.
I've learned my lessons.
What a sober conversation with two young senators, folks, 42 and 34 respectively. How about that? This is the kind of conversation we should be having each and every day to remind us that there is hope ahead for this country. Let's take a quick break on JKL. Come back. We're going to read your tweets a little later on, so keep tweeting at Koinange Jeff, at Citizen TV Kenya, the hashtag JK Live. JK Live takes a break. We'll be back. See you in a moment.